It started as one of those solo trips I take when I need to clear my head. No phones, no people, just me and the woods. I'd done this kind of thing a dozen times. Same gear: a tent, sleeping bag, a little camping stove, some freeze-dried meals, water bottles, bear spray, knife, flashlight, backup batteries, all packed tight in my old external frame pack. I had maps printed out and marked, a compass, and a weather radio. I wasn't stupid about it. This time I drove out to the edge of a state forest in northern Montana. Not far from Glacier National Park, but far enough to avoid the crowds. There were trailheads with dirt lots and a few Forest Service signs, but no ranger station nearby. I parked my truck, signed the logbook at the trailhead like you're supposed to, and started in. It was early fall, the air was crisp, and the leaves were just starting to turn. I remember how quiet it was, that kind of quiet you only get way out there, where even the wind seems to respect the silence. I hiked in maybe 7 or 8 miles, crossed a few creeks, and set up camp near a small lake. It didn't have a name on the map, just a blue circle surrounded by pine trees and a little meadow off to one side. Perfect spot. I pitched my tent back under the tree line for shelter, hung my food high up from a branch about 200 feet away, like the books tell you, and settled in. The first night was peaceful, cool but not cold. I sat by the lake watching the sky turn dark, and stars come out one by one like someone was poking holes in the black. I could hear owls, the odd rustle of some small animal in the brush, but nothing out of place. I slept fine. Second day, I hiked around the area, took it easy, climbed up a low ridge nearby just to get a better look. From up there, I could see hills rolling out in all directions. No roads, no houses, no power lines, just wilderness. I didn't see any big game, but I found tracks. Elk, maybe a moose. Something heavy had come through that area, but it wasn't fresh. A day or two old, maybe more. I made a mental note and moved on. That evening, back at camp, I heard coyotes. Distant at first, just a few yips and howls far off. I didn't think much of it. Coyotes don't bother people unless they're starving, and even then, not likely. I went to bed with the sound of their voices echoing faintly in the hills. But things changed on the third day. I'd gone out exploring again, farther this time. I didn't bring the whole pack, just a small day bag, snacks, water, basic supplies. I followed a game trail heading north and found a small clearing. That's where I saw the cub. It was no more than 20 feet away, off to the right near a thicket of brush. Black bear, small, maybe 40 or 50 pounds. Still had that puppyish look to it, and it was busy digging around under a log. I froze. My brain went flat for a second, just blank panic. Then instincts kicked in. If there's a cub, the sow is somewhere nearby. And if she thinks I'm a threat, she'll come in fast and without a warning. I slowly backed up, didn't turn my back, didn't run. Just slow steps, keeping my eyes moving, scanning the trees. I couldn't hear anything, but that didn't mean she wasn't there. After about 2 minutes, longest damn minutes of my life, I was back out of the clearing and down the trail, moving faster now, still watching over my shoulder. No sounds, no sign of her. I hiked straight back to camp and spent the rest of the day close to my tent. Didn't want to push my luck. That night was different. The coyotes came back, closer this time. I could tell from the way the sound echoed. There were more of them too, maybe 6 or 7 from what I could count. I tried to ignore it, kept telling myself they weren't a threat. But they kept howling, not just once or twice, but on and off for hours, like they were moving around. Sometimes to the east, sometimes west, then back again. Circling maybe, or following something. I didn't sleep much. Next morning I found prints. Not just coyote, though there were plenty of those, but something big. Bear tracks. Fresh. Real fresh. One print was only about 20 yards from my tent. The hair on my arms went up. I stood there looking at it, thinking how close she'd been, and I hadn't heard a thing. I packed up camp fast, decided to head back toward the trailhead. It was early, maybe 7 a.m., sun still low. I didn't eat, just shoved food in my pack and got moving. I kept my bear spray in hand the whole time, thumb on the trigger. I wasn't messing around anymore. About 3 miles into the hike back, I heard rustling to the left. Not squirrels, not birds. Heavy, snapping branches. I stopped dead in my tracks, waited, listening. The sounds stopped too. I scanned the trees but couldn't see anything. I started walking again, slower now. The rustling picked up again after a few seconds, same distance. Like it was pacing me. I stopped again. It stopped. That's when I caught a glimpse. Not the bear. Coyote. Just one standing between two trees. Watching me. That didn't sit right. Coyotes don't usually tail people, especially alone. It didn't come closer, just stood there staring. Then disappeared into the brush. Another 100 yards down the trail, another one. This time on the other side. Again, just standing there, quiet. I started feeling boxed in, like they were testing me. Then I heard it again, from deeper in the woods. A low huff. That's the sound bears make sometimes. Not a roar, not a growl. Just a sharp exhale. Not far off, maybe 50 yards. I froze again. My brain was screaming now. Run, hide, do something, but I held still. I didn't want to make noise. I slowly crouched down behind a fallen log and waited. Bear spray ready, heart thumping so loud I was sure they could hear it. The woods went quiet. I waited maybe 10 minutes. Could have been 20. Then I heard movement again, this time fading away. Whatever it was, it had lost interest or moved on. I stood up, scanned the area, didn't see anything. Started hiking again, faster now. I was getting close to the halfway point, but I didn't feel safe. About a mile from the trailhead, the trees opened up a bit. The trail went along a low ridge with a view downhill. That's when I saw them. Not one or two, but 5 coyotes, spread out below me, walking in the same direction I was headed. Not looking at me, not chasing, just moving steady, like they knew where I was going. I didn't stop, just kept hiking. I had a knife on my belt now too, just in case. The last half mile felt like forever. I kept looking behind me, expecting to see one of them pop out from the brush, but nothing did. Finally, I saw my truck. Sunlight on the hood like some kind of beacon. I jogged the last stretch, threw my pack in the back seat, climbed in, locked the doors, and just sat there for a minute, catching my breath. Before I drove off, I looked back toward the trailhead. There, just inside the tree line, I saw one last coyote, just standing there, watching me. I drove all the way back to town without stopping. When I got home, I unpacked, checked my gear, and threw away some food that had gotten damp. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time the wind brushed against the house, I thought of that huff, that soft, low exhale. I've been back out in the woods since then, but not alone. Not anymore. You think you know the rules out there, that if you're careful, follow the books, carry the right gear, nothing can happen. But finding a bear cub isn't just bad luck. It's a warning, because where there's a cub, there's a mother. And out there, in that quiet place where no one can hear you scream, the rules don't mean much. Not when you're caught between hungry coyotes and a mother bear who thinks you're a threat to her baby. That trip reminded me how fast things can go wrong, and how lucky I was to get out of there before they did. When I first told people I was going off into the woods for 2 weeks with no cooler, no packaged meals, and no camp stove, most thought I was just playing tough. I wasn't. I meant it. I said, I can make my own food, and I believed it. I didn't need gas burners or freeze-dried crap. I had my fishing gear, my snare wire, a ferro rod, and a knife that could split bone. I wanted to get away from everything: noise, traffic, work, the city, even people. I'd been watching wilderness survival videos for a year. I practiced in the park near my apartment and even tried urban foraging once. I wasn't a professional, but I was confident. Too confident, probably. I picked a remote patch of national forest in Montana. Not one of the famous spots, but deep enough that there was no cell service, no trails, no ranger station for miles. I parked my truck at the end of an unmarked dirt road, locked it, slung my pack on, and hiked 15 miles into the woods. I took my time. By the time I made camp, I hadn't seen another human in almost 2 days. That's exactly what I wanted. The first 3 days went well. I built a small lean-to from pine and spruce, lined it with dry leaves and pine needles, and set up near a narrow stream where I could fish and filter water. My snares caught 2 rabbits and a squirrel. I roasted them on greenwood sticks and seasoned them with wild garlic and spruce tips. I felt like I was thriving. I felt superior. On the 4th day, I found something strange near the stream. A pile of stacked rocks. 6 of them, one on top of the other, shaped like a little tower. Not unusual in itself, but they were balanced too perfectly, and they were in a spot where the flow had clearly been disturbed. The water wasn't running right. It pooled around the base like someone had diverted it slightly. I figured it was another camper or some bored hiker, though I hadn't seen any footprints or signs of anyone else. I knocked the tower over without thinking. I needed that water to run clear. That night, I woke up to something snapping in the woods, loud and fast, like a thick branch had been broken in two. I sat up, heart racing, and gripped my knife. I waited for the sound of footsteps or rustling, but nothing followed. Kai, my shepherd mix, was with me and he didn't bark. He just stared into the dark. The next morning, I found 2 of my snares gone. Not tripped, gone. The wire was cut clean like someone used bolt cutters. I checked the area. No tracks, not even boot prints. Just grass flattened in a wide circle, like someone had stood there, still, for a long time. I told myself it could have been a bear. They're smart sometimes. I reset the snares with extra care, made new ones farther from camp, and kept my knife close that night. Day 6, I came back from the stream to find the rest of my snares cut. All of them, 11 in total. Same clean snip. One had a rabbit in it, left hanging by the neck, blood dripping from the jaw. But the meat was untouched. Whoever did it didn't want the food. They just wanted me not to have it. That night, I started a bigger fire. I didn't sleep much. I sat up with my back to a tree, watching the dark woods, knife and flashlight in hand. Kai lay beside me, ears up the whole time. Around 3 a.m., he growled. A deep, low sound that came from his chest like thunder. I shone my flashlight into the trees. Nothing, just rows of black trunks and the hint of branches swaying in the wind. But I felt it. I felt someone there, not an animal. I've hunted. I've seen predators. This was different. This wasn't something trying to eat. This was something watching, waiting, thinking. By day 8, I was low on food. My traps were useless now. The fish had stopped biting too, like the stream was empty. I hiked upriver to check the flow, thinking maybe something had dammed it. That's when I found the second one. Another stone stack, bigger this time. 10 rocks, some the size of my head, balanced on top of each other with pine needles tucked in between the cracks. Something about it made my stomach drop. The air felt wrong around it. Too quiet. No birds. No bugs. Just wind. I didn't touch this one. I walked 10 miles that day, looking for signs of someone. I found nothing. No tents. No trash. Not even broken branches. Just those stacks. Another one stood halfway up a ridge, too far from the water to mean anything. Why were they there? That night, I kept my fire burning all the way until dawn. I heard footsteps, real ones this time. Heavy, slow, steady. Not deer, not bear, human. They circled the camp once. I called out, but there was no answer. Just silence. Kai growled again, deep and constant, like he was warning them away. I didn't sleep at all. By day 10, I knew I had to leave. I packed light, only what I could carry. My pack weighed maybe 30 pounds. I slung it over one shoulder and started heading south, back toward where I'd parked. It was a long hike. I thought I could make it in 2 days if I pushed. But after 5 hours of walking, I realized something was off. The landmarks didn't match. The ridges weren't where they should be. I checked my map and compass again and again. The needle spun in circles. Something was interfering. I climbed a high ridge to get a look. I should have seen the lake. I didn't. I should have seen the dry creek bed I crossed on day 3. Gone. Instead, I saw more stone stacks. 3 of them, all tall, all in perfect lines along the ridge, spaced like markers. That night, I camped without fire. No food, just water and silence. Kai was stiff beside me, breathing fast, ears twitching every few seconds. I couldn't hear anything, but he could. I kept the knife in my hand until morning. On the 12th day, I spotted something moving ahead on the trail. At first I thought it was a deer, but it was too low, too slow. I moved closer, staying low. It was a man, shirtless, barefoot, wearing pants that were ripped at the knees. He was crouched down by a tree, placing something on the ground. I watched from behind a rock. It was another stone stack, but this one had something tucked inside it. Meat. Raw, red, fresh. A rabbit leg maybe, or something similar. He placed it with care, like it mattered where it went. Then he stood up and walked back into the woods without looking around. I waited until he was gone, then approached. The meat was fresh, too fresh, still warm. I didn't touch it. Instead, I moved fast, ran even. I ditched the trail and went through brush and fallen trees. I didn't care if I was off course. I just wanted out. I was running low on water, starving, shaking from lack of food and sleep. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. I made camp late, half buried in dry leaves beneath a rocky overhang. No fire. I didn't want them seeing smoke. I ate a few wild greens I'd found and a tiny frog I'd caught in the stream. Tasted awful, but it was something. I kept telling myself, I can make my own food. I just have to survive long enough. The next morning, I woke up with pine needles stuffed into my boots. Not fallen, stuffed. I didn't sleep after that. I hiked hard all day, drinking from whatever puddles I found, praying for the truck to show up around the next hill. Then, in the distance, I saw a glint. Chrome. A bumper. I nearly screamed. I pushed through thick trees and fell onto the dirt road, mouth dry, heart pounding. There was my truck, exactly where I left it, untouched, but something had been inside. The doors were locked, the windows rolled up, but the driver's seat was reclined all the way back, and there was a small pile of stacked rocks on the dash. 5 of them, no more than an inch wide. I got in anyway, started the engine, turned over. The gas tank was half full. I drove until the sun came up. Didn't stop, not once. Kai didn't move the whole time, just sat in the back seat, staring out the window. When I finally got back to town, I didn't tell anyone what really happened, just said I got lost. Bad map, bad luck. That was all. I cleaned the truck, threw the rocks out, sold half my gear. The only thing I kept was the knife. I still sleep with it. I live in the city now. Haven't been camping since. Every time I hear something tapping on my windows at night, I wonder if someone followed me out, if someone marked me, but I'm still alive. That's the part that matters. I said I could make my own food. I meant it, but it turns out someone else out there could too, and they didn't like competition. I work as a counselor at a summer camp deep in the woods of Southern California, the kind of place that's tucked so far off any main road that by the time you arrive, your phone signal has long since disappeared. The dirt road leading into camp winds through dense pine forests, over dry creek beds, and past boulders bigger than cars. It's the sort of wilderness that makes you feel small, but in a good way. Mostly, camp runs for about 8 weeks each summer. The kids change every couple weeks, but the staff stays the same. By the time the second week rolls around, we're like a weird family. Sunburned, half exhausted, and used to things most people would find totally insane. You get used to waking up with spider webs in your boots, to coyotes howling through the night, to bats swooping over the campfire ring. And you get used to hearing the sounds of the forest, the normal stuff like crickets and owls, and the not-so-normal stuff like things moving through the brush when nothing should be there. The animals out here are no joke. There's a family of deer that wanders through near the main mess hall around dusk. Foxes dart between shadows, especially near the creek. Every now and then we'll see a rattlesnake stretched across the road, sunning itself in the afternoon heat. Once, a mountain lion was spotted up near the ridge trail, just a glimpse of it disappearing into the trees, but enough to make the director bring everyone back to camp early and call the ranger station. It was gone before anyone could track it, but still, it made people nervous. Then there are the weird places, the ones you avoid after dark. Behind the archery range, there's a pile of stones no one put there, perfectly stacked, covered in moss, but not in any pattern that makes sense. They just sit there, slowly sinking into the dirt. There's an old burned-out structure near the East Trail, with a rusted stove still standing in the middle of it, like a tombstone. Nobody really knows what it was, but we tell stories anyway. That someone used to live there, that something bad happened. It's all just part of the lore. It's a camp tradition to make up ghost stories about those spots. The kids eat it up, but most of us counselors know better than to believe in any of it. Or at least we pretend we don't. By the time this particular night rolled around, I'd already been through 4 weeks of camp. That meant hundreds of bug bites, a half-dozen homesick meltdowns, a few thunderstorms, and more nights sleeping on thin mattresses in damp cabins than I cared to count. My boys were all around 11 or 12 years old, and most nights I could get them to sleep by 10, after some gentle reminders to stop whispering and put their flashlights away. This night, things felt normal. It was cool out. One of those rare, breezy nights that make you forget how hot the days are. The stars were bright. I'd just gotten my kids settled and was standing outside the cabin talking with another counselor, drinking the last of a warm sports drink and trying to fight off the drowsiness creeping in behind my eyes. That's when I saw Sadie running down the path from the girls' side of camp. She wasn't alone. Her whole cabin, maybe a dozen teenage girls, was trailing behind her, all dressed in black, and they looked absolutely freaked. Not like playfully scared, genuinely freaked out. You could see it in their faces and the way they moved, like prey trying to escape something real. Sadie is not the kind of person who gets scared easily. She grew up hiking, does rock climbing, and once stayed calm during a bear encounter. So when she passed us with that panicked look in her eye, I knew something was off. She didn't stop, just motioned in a rush and kept running. But from what I could piece together later, they'd been out on a night hike. A game. They dressed in black and played ninjas, sneaking along the trail and practicing being silent in the dark. Normal enough, but on the way back, just as they reached one of the darker, thicker parts of the woods, they heard something. A voice, faint, just beyond the treeline. It was calling out, "Help," just once. Soft, small, a child's voice from somewhere it shouldn't have been. The first time, they thought maybe it was a camper who got lost. They paused, listened. Then it came again. Help, but it was different now. Slurred, almost like someone pretending to cry. Sadie told me later it sounded fake, but not in the way kids fake things. Fake like something that didn't know what a human really sounded like but was trying to copy one anyway. Each time they heard it, it got more and more distorted, warped, louder but not clearer, like something dragging the word through water. And then it didn't sound like a child at all anymore. It sounded wrong, but it kept calling. Not from one spot either. It seemed to echo from all over the slope behind them, like it had no source, just vibration and tone. That's when they ran. Sadie came back maybe 30 minutes later. Her campers were asleep, but she couldn't shake the feeling. Couldn't either. She wanted to go back. I didn't want to, not really, but I wasn't about to let her go alone. So we grabbed our flashlights and walked toward that section of the trail. We didn't talk much. The air was still. No wind, no bugs, just silence and the sound of our boots on dirt. As we got closer, the temperature dropped. Not dramatically, no one's breath was fogging or anything like that, but enough that the air felt damp, like the kind of cold you get in the shade even though it's the middle of the night. Then we heard it. First, just a quiet sound. A yelp. Sharp, not human, not even close, but it echoed in a way that filled the space, like the trees themselves were vibrating with it. Then again, louder, help, but this wasn't a voice. It was something imitating a voice, a twisted, high-pitched screech drawn out and unnatural, like a bobcat trying to mimic a child, sharp and cracking, like its throat was torn but still forcing the word out. It didn't come from one direction. It rolled off the hillside and from behind the trees and from above, like the mountains were saying it. The flashlight in my hand shook, just enough to rattle the beam. Sadie's face had gone pale. We stood there for maybe 5 seconds, listening. Then it screamed again. Not help this time, just a noise. A raw, broken sound, like metal tearing, like pain trying to speak. We ran. Neither of us said anything. We just turned and bolted back to camp, sprinting up the path, ducking under branches, not stopping until we saw the glow of the dining hall porch lights. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, after breakfast, there was a meeting. The camp director gathered all the staff behind the mess hall. He said someone had reported hearing disturbing noises in the woods. Screeches, yelps, cries. Then he told us calmly that bobcats were native to the area, and that sometimes, especially at night during mating season or when they're feeling threatened, they let out high-pitched yowls that sound almost human. He told us to remind campers that they were harmless and not to worry. I looked at Sadie. She looked back. We didn't say anything, but we both knew. What we heard wasn't just a bobcat. It was multiple sounds, moving, changing, growing more distorted each time. The timing, the way it filled the entire mountainside, it didn't feel like an animal. It felt like something intelligent was toying with us, like it was trying to speak but couldn't quite get it right. We told the story anyway, around the fire pits, during counselor breaks. Sometimes we made it funny, played it off like we were just city kids scared of a house cat. But deep down, we both knew what we'd heard. All summer, the other counselors teased us. Some even played recordings of bobcat sounds on their phones, blasting them at night just to mess with us. We laughed, rolled our eyes, took the jokes. But every now and then, when I was walking alone to the bathroom late at night or sitting on the porch after lights out, I'd find myself staring out at the woods and remembering how the trees had gone still, how the voice had shifted from something familiar into something wrong, how it hadn't come from any one direction, but everywhere. Nature can make sounds that twist your spine, especially when you're far from home and the dark feels bigger than usual. Bobcats can scream like children, and sometimes animals make noises you didn't know they could. But that doesn't change how it felt out there, like something watching, like something trying to speak in a voice it didn't own. I've been back to that camp 3 more summers since then. I've hiked that trail again in daylight and at night. I've heard coyotes, foxes, owls, and yes, bobcats. I've heard them scream, and I can tell you now that sound is close. It's very close, but it's not exactly what we heard. Sometimes I think maybe there was a bobcat out there that night, maybe more than one. Maybe it was just bad timing, a perfect storm of noise and fear and shadows. Maybe, but sometimes I still dream about that hillside, the way it breathed sound, the way it seemed alive in a way nothing else ever has. And no matter how many times I hear that bobcat recording, it never quite matches what I remember. I used to think I was pretty comfortable in the woods. I grew up around them, spent most of my teenage years hiking or fishing or just getting lost in some tree line behind a friend's house. Nothing ever happened that really shook me. A bad storm here and there, maybe a sprained ankle once. But nothing that made me think, maybe I shouldn't be out here alone. I wasn't really alone this time either. It was me and my girlfriend. We'd been planning this overnight hike for weeks. Just a short trip on the North Country Trail, a section in Michigan where the trees stretch tall and tight, and the moss grows soft under your boots. The weather looked good. Cool, dry air. Not many bugs yet. Perfect for hammocks. We weren't doing anything crazy. Maybe 12 or 15 miles total. Just enough to get far enough off the main trailheads to feel like we were out in it. We had our packs, food for 2 days, headlamps, filters, all the basics. We didn't even plan to set up a tent. Just the hammocks, some rain tarps, and enough layers to stay warm overnight. We hit the trail around noon on a Saturday. The lot had maybe one other car in it. We didn't see anyone all day, just empty woods, the occasional sound of birds up high, and that rhythm of boots on dirt that slows your brain down. That's why I like the trail. Your thoughts settle into something simple. Eat, drink, walk, rest. That's it. Life boils down to just that. We stopped for a late lunch near a bend in the trail where a small creek crossed through. We filtered water, stretched out for a while, and talked about how far we wanted to go. There was no need to push too far, we had nowhere to be. Around 4 in the afternoon, we figured we'd done enough for the day. Maybe 8 miles in, we found a spot about 30 feet off trail, past some pines and ferns, with 2 decent trees to hang between. Flat ground, No dead branches above. The spot felt good. We strung the hammocks, set up the tarps even though the sky was clear, and settled in for some rest. We weren't even planning to sleep yet. Just snooze a little, let the sun go down, maybe get up for a quick dinner before it got too dark. I remember lying there, just swaying gently, feeling the breeze across my face. The woods were still, calm, not silent, but the kind of quiet that feels natural. Birds, maybe a squirrel now and then, leaves rustling. I must have dozed off for a bit because the next thing I remember was a sound. Not loud, not violent, just a dry rustle like something brushing the undergrowth. I didn't jump or panic, just opened my eyes, sat up a little in the hammock, and looked around. And there it was, Coyote, maybe 10 feet away, standing still, head low, eyes locked on me. Not snarling, not pacing, just staring. My chest tightened. I didn't move fast, just froze, held my breath. It blinked once, then turned and bolted into the brush. Fast, gone. But before I could fully process that, something else moved on the other side of us. Another rustle, heavier this time. I didn't see it, but I heard the weight in the branches, the way it pushed through without caring how loud it was. Bigger than the coyote, that much I knew. I swung out of the hammock fast and started untying the lines. My girlfriend was already moving too, not saying anything, just stuffing gear back into her pack. The calm was gone. That slow rhythm of the day shattered. Now it was all instinct. Move, leave, get back on trail. We didn't stop to cook, just packed up and got moving. Didn't even take 5 minutes. I remember glancing back once into the woods where that second sound had come from, trying to catch a shape, a shadow, anything. But there was nothing there, just trees, stillness. The trail felt different now, still empty, but not peaceful. Every step felt loud. My ears strained for anything unusual. Every bird call felt sharp, every broken twig too close. And then it happened again. We came around a bend, and there, right in the middle of the trail, was a bear cub. Small, black, round ears, sitting up on its hind legs like it was trying to figure out what we were. It saw us at the same time we saw it, and in a flash it took off into the brush. But that's not the part that made my blood run cold. It was what I didn't see. No one hikes in the woods without hearing this warning at least once. If you see a bear cub, you're already in trouble, because the mother is nearby, always, and she doesn't wait to figure out what your intentions are. We stopped for half a second, enough to listen. The silence after that cub ran was complete. Not a branch, not a breath, no wind, just the pounding of our hearts. I didn't say a word, just picked up my pace. So did she. Not running. You don't run in the woods. That's how you trip, twist an ankle, end up as an easy target. But we moved fast, controlled, scanning both sides of the trail like our lives depended on it. I kept thinking I'd see her. I kept thinking I'd hear a crash behind us, see black fur barreling down the slope, feel claws or teeth. Nothing happened, but the fear didn't go away. It stayed in my throat, in my chest, for every single step of the hike out. We didn't talk, just walked, fast and steady, checking behind us constantly. We kept going for hours. The sun dropped behind the hills, and the trail turned to shadow. We got out the headlamps but didn't stop to put them on right. Just clipped them to our belts, enough to catch glimpses of the trail ahead. By the time we saw the sign for the trailhead, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 5 miles. The car was still there, no one else around. We climbed in, slammed the doors shut, locked them, and just sat there for a minute. That's when I realized how tight my hands were clenched, how sore my legs felt, how bad I was shaking. We didn't stay the second night. We drove straight back to town, stopped at a gas station for water and a snack, and then got home around midnight. I sat on the couch in the dark for a while after she went to bed, listening, thinking. Coyotes aren't that dangerous. Not really. They're skittish. The coyote that saw me probably just wandered close without realizing I was there. It got spooked and ran. Same with the bear cub. It didn't want to fight. Neither did its mom. But not wanting a fight and avoiding one aren't the same thing. Out there, it's not about logic. It's about reaction. You take one wrong step, one wrong sound, 1 second too slow, and you're in it. That's the part that stuck with me the most. How fast the mood changed. We went from lazy hammock naps to full body fear in seconds. From lighthearted to survival mode just like that. I still hike. Not as far. Not as deep. Not at night. And never without checking and double-checking the area for recent wildlife reports. Never again without bear spray. People like to say nature is peaceful, that it clears your mind, and it does. But nature doesn't care how you feel, doesn't care how careful you are. You're just another animal out there, one more shape in the trees. Next time someone invites me to head deep into the woods, hang hammocks, and take it easy, I'll smile, nod. Then I'll check the area for bear activity, bring extra batteries and sleep light. Because once you've had a wild stare lock eyes with you 10 feet away and heard something bigger running in the dark behind you, you don't ever rest the same again. And you sure as hell don't hang your hammock 30 feet off trail just because it feels like a good spot. No one's out there but you and the things that already live there. I still think about that night more often than I'd like to admit. It was a long time ago, back when I was still in high school, and we were all still figuring out who we were and what we wanted to be. There were 5 of us, me, Matt, Jordan, Chris, and Andrew, and we all decided we were going to hike out into the mountains for a weekend camping trip. It wasn't the first time we'd camped together, but it was definitely the most ambitious we'd gotten with it. We'd all just finished our final exams for the term, and the idea was to celebrate by going off-grid for a couple of days. We planned it for weeks. Matt got the maps and worked out the route. Chris convinced his dad to lend us a 4-man tent and some other gear. We pooled our cash to buy gas, snacks, and a few essentials. I was the one who convinced my folks to let me go, though I left out the part where we planned to hike almost 10 miles off the nearest trailhead and set up camp deep in the forest. The place we went to was out past a national park boundary. Technically, it was legal to be there, but it was the kind of place where people didn't normally go unless they knew what they were doing. We didn't have much experience, to be honest, but we figured we'd be fine. We had flashlights, a first aid kit, plenty of water and food, a couple of knives, and a small hatchet. It was mid-autumn, still warm in the day, but it dipped down into the low 40s at night, so we brought decent sleeping bags. We left early Saturday morning and got to the trailhead by about 9 a.m. It was cold but clear, and we were all in good spirits. The first few miles weren't bad. The trail was easy enough to follow, winding through scrubby pines and slowly climbing. We had our backpacks strapped tight and we took our time. We passed a few other hikers that morning, but by noon we were alone. The last 5 miles weren't on any official trail. Matt had a topo map, and we followed animal tracks and old logging paths until we were far enough from any sign of people. By the time we found a good place to set up camp, it was already close to 5 in the afternoon. The spot was decent, flat ground, not too many rocks, and surrounded by a thick mix of pine and tall underbrush. You couldn't see the sky except in small patches above. There were no real clearings, but we found a spot where the trees were spaced out enough to get the tent up and move around without tripping over roots. Everything smelled like pine needles and dry leaves. We could hear birds moving through the trees, and every once in a while the wind would stir through and shake everything around us. We were all pretty beat by then, but we worked together to pitch the tent and build a small fire ring out of rocks. We didn't want a big fire, just enough to cook a bit and keep warm. We boiled some noodles, roasted a few hot dogs, and passed around a pack of marshmallows someone had crammed into their bag. It was calm and quiet and almost fun. After a while, the sun dipped below the trees and the forest turned dark fast. We sat around for a bit, shining our flashlights into the woods and making each other jump. Then, one by one, we started calling it a night. I remember being the last one up, poking at the embers of the fire with a stick until they faded to red. The cold was creeping in, and I finally zipped myself into the tent. We had a big one, barely enough room for 5 sleeping bags, but it was warm once we all got in. No one said much, just the sound of sleeping bags rustling and a few coughs. Pretty soon everyone was asleep. I dozed off listening to the forest, branches creaking, the occasional owl hooting, wind rustling the canopy. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but it was pitch black inside the tent. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, even after my eyes adjusted. I laid there for a moment, not sure what had pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it, a single, deliberate sound outside the tent. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, a sort of crunch, like someone stepping on dry leaves or twigs. I held my breath and listened. A few seconds passed. Then I heard it again, another step, and then another off to the side. It was the kind of sound you can't mistake for wind or settling trees. It was movement. At first I thought maybe it was one of the guys getting up to take a piss, but the steps weren't just coming from one spot. After the third or fourth crunch, I realized the sounds were coming from different directions. First ahead of me, then behind, then to the left. I started counting them in my head. At least 3, maybe more. It was a weird feeling, lying there frozen in a nylon tent that wouldn't stop anything if someone, or something, really wanted to get inside. My heart started to beat faster. I thought maybe it was an animal, a bear maybe, or a couple of coyotes. But coyotes usually make noise, and these steps were too slow, too spaced out. Not like animals, more like something stalking. That's when I decided to check. I didn't want to wake the others unless I had to, and I figured maybe I was just overthinking it. Maybe my brain was just making shapes out of sounds, like it sometimes does in the dark. But I needed to know. So I slowly reached over to where I'd left my flashlight by my sleeping bag, unzipped the inner flap of the tent just a few inches, and eased it open. Cold air rushed in. I stuck my head out and scanned the darkness with the flashlight, hand shaking. I swept the beam in an arc, just a few feet at first, not sure what I expected to see. First, nothing, just trees and darkness. Then I caught something. Eyes, not one pair, but several, scattered through the woods around us, shining back at me in the beam of the flashlight. Bright reflections, big and high off the ground. I thought they might be raccoons or possums, but these weren't low. They were eye level with me, 5, maybe 6 feet off the ground. And they were wide apart, too far for something small. My first thought was that there were people standing out there. That's when the panic really set in. I froze with the flashlight locked on those glowing dots. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. I started counting again, 1 pair, 2, 3, for more than I could keep track of. They weren't close, maybe 20 or 30 feet out, but close enough to see they were surrounding us. Then one of them shifted. Just a small movement, a step maybe. The light caught the outline of a body for a split second, tall, narrow. That's when I realized. It was deer, a herd of deer, standing in the trees, just watching the tent. It sounds ridiculous now, but in that moment, in the pitch dark, coming out of a dead sleep with no warning, it scared the hell out of me. My body had gone into full-on fight or flight mode. I thought we were being stalked by something dangerous, and the silence of it all, the careful steps, the stillness, it fed into that feeling. I let the beam of the flashlight drift across the herd. The more I looked, the more shapes I could make out. Antlers on a couple of them. Mostly does, but a few big bucks too. They stood totally still, not afraid, just observing. No snorting, no stomping. Just silent, waiting. I didn't know what to do. I kept watching for a few minutes, half expecting them to charge, half expecting them to run. But they did neither. After a while, one turned its head, and then another. Slowly, without a sound, the herd began to back away into the trees. The eyes disappeared one by one. Within a few minutes, they were gone. I zipped the tent closed again and laid there staring at the ceiling. My body was still tense, heart hammering. I didn't sleep again until maybe an hour before sunrise. In the morning, no one else had any idea anything had happened. They all slept through it. I didn't say anything right away. I just got up, checked around the site for tracks. Sure enough, there were dozens of prints in the soft earth around the tent. Hooves, some fresh droppings too. No claw marks, no boot prints, just deer. We stayed one more night, but I didn't sleep much that second time either. Nothing else happened, but I kept thinking I'd hear those steps again. That weird, careful pacing through the leaves, like something planning to get close without being noticed. Even now, years later, I sometimes think about those eyes. The way they just stood there, tall and unmoving, watching us sleep. It reminded me that the forest is never really empty. You're never really alone out there, even when it feels like you are. And no matter how harmless something is in the light, in the dark, everything feels like a threat. That trip was the last time we camped that deep in the mountains. We stuck to regular sites after that, ones with fire pits and pit toilets and, more importantly, other people nearby. We never really talked about why, but I think we all felt it, that something had changed after that weekend. That we'd gone far enough into the wild and didn't need to push it again. For me, it was the eyes. Not because they were deer, but because, for just a few minutes that night, I believed they weren't. And that was enough. I should have just stayed home. That's the thought that kept coming back to me over and over again, like a steady drumbeat in my skull. But I didn't. I had the long weekend ahead, and I thought I needed to get away from it all. That phrase sounds so harmless until you're out there, miles from cell service, surrounded by trees that all look the same, with the light fading and the air growing colder by the second. I left early Friday morning. My plan was to hike about 10 miles out to a secluded lake I'd found on a topographical map. It didn't even have a real name, just a blue smudge in a basin surrounded by forest. There weren't any trails leading directly to it, but there were fire roads nearby, and I figured I'd cut cross-country for the last mile or so. I had done things like this before. Not this remote, maybe, but enough to feel like I knew what I was doing. I packed light but smart freeze-dried meals, water filter, bear spray, med kit, the usual gear. My backpack weighed maybe 30 pounds. I wore broken-in boots, layered clothes, and a hat to block the sun. The weather was supposed to be cool and dry. No rain in the forecast. It seemed like everything was lined up for a quiet, peaceful weekend. Just me, a tent, a fire, and the lake. The first 5 miles were easy. Wide trails, mostly downhill. I passed 2 other hikers going the other direction. After that, it was just me. The trail narrowed and got steeper. I lost a bit of elevation and then had to climb again. I remember the exact moment I left the marked trail. There was a cairn, a little stack of rocks, that someone must have left to mark a game trail. I checked my GPS and compass and saw that the lake was just about 1.5 miles northwest. I turned and stepped off the trail. Within 5 minutes, I couldn't see the path anymore. The woods were dense and quiet. My boots sank into damp leaves. Twigs cracked underfoot. Every few minutes, I stopped to listen. I could hear wind in the trees and sometimes a bird, but nothing else. Felt peaceful then, like I had really gotten away. After maybe an hour of hiking, I crested a small ridge and saw it. The lake. Dark blue, surrounded by evergreens, and completely still. There were no cabins, no fire rings, no signs of people at all. I set up my tent just off the water under a patch of pine trees. I took off my boots, made a small fire, and boiled water for dinner. I remember sitting there, looking out at the lake, thinking how perfect it was, how this was exactly what I'd needed, just some time away from everything. I should have left after the first night. That first night, I slept okay. It got cold after midnight, and I had to zip my bag up all the way. I woke up a couple of times to the sound of branches snapping somewhere in the distance. But that's normal in the woods. Deer, maybe even a bear moving through. Nothing alarming. Still, I made sure my food was hung up and my bear spray was close by. The second day, I explored around the lake. Found a few animal trails, some scat, nothing strange. No trash, no footprints, just forest. I thought I saw a fox at one point, but it darted off too fast to be sure. I filtered water from the lake and filled my bottles. The weather held. Blue skies, not too hot. I made another fire that night, bigger this time, and stayed up a little later, staring into the flames until they were just embers. That night was different. I woke up at some point. No idea what time it was. Could have been 2 a.m., could have been 4. I had that feeling like something had pulled me out of sleep, even though I didn't know what. I lay still in my sleeping bag, listening. First, it was just quiet. Then I heard it, very faint, like footsteps on dry leaves. Not fast, not heavy, but there. I thought maybe it was a deer again, or a raccoon. but something about it didn't feel right. It stopped and started, almost like it was circling. I unzipped my bag as quietly as I could and reached for the bear spray. My heart was pounding. I didn't move, didn't open the tent, just listened. The footsteps got closer, still soft, but now definitely two-legged. That's when I got cold all over. I knew the difference. A deer will wander, stop to chew, move again. These steps were steady, slow, and deliberate, like someone was trying to move without being heard. Then it stopped. I waited, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. I didn't hear anything else. Eventually, I must have fallen back asleep. In the morning, I got up as soon as it was light. I looked around the tent. No tracks, nothing out of place. My food bag was untouched. The fire pit was cold. I walked a little ways into the woods in the direction I thought I'd heard the steps. Nothing, just trees and underbrush. Still, I felt different that day. I was on edge. I kept looking over my shoulder. The quiet felt heavier. I tried to shake it off. I made breakfast, refilled water, even went for a short walk to the far end of the lake. But I couldn't relax. That night, I didn't make a fire. I didn't want to draw attention. I sat in the tent with the flap zipped shut. I didn't cook anything, just ate a protein bar and drank water. I kept the bear spray in one hand and my headlamp on low, pointed at the tent wall. I was tired but wired at the same time. It was around midnight when I heard the sound again. This time it was clearer footsteps and closer than before. They stopped just outside the tent. I could hear breathing, not heavy, not fast, just breathing. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I held my breath and sat there, completely still. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe a minute, maybe 5. Then I heard it walk away, slowly, back the way it came. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The first light, I packed everything as fast as I could. I didn't eat. I didn't even change clothes. I just shoved gear into my pack and started walking. I had marked my trail in, but it was rough going. I got turned around more than once. My GPS worked, but I had no service. The battery was half gone. I kept moving, checking my compass, backtracking once or twice. At one point, I heard movement behind me. I turned, but saw nothing. Could have been a squirrel, a bird, but I picked up the pace. I didn't stop for breaks. My legs were burning by the time I got back to the fire road. I thought I was safe then. I remember thinking that. I'd made it back to the road, just a few more miles to the trailhead. I could make it, but then I saw it. About 30 yards up the road, on the side of the trail, there was a pile of rocks. Not natural, not a cairn either. It looked like someone had just dumped a bunch of stones in a heap. But right on top, laid flat, was a knife. Not new. The blade was rusty. The handle was wrapped in some kind of cloth. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't go closer. I just stood there. Something about it felt wrong, like it had been placed there for someone to find, or to see. I looked around the woods, but I didn't see anyone. I kept moving. I didn't run, but I walked fast. Every hair on my neck was up. Every sound made me jump. I kept my hand on the bear spray the whole way. I didn't stop until I reached my car. When I finally got in and locked the doors, I sat there for a long time. My hands were shaking. I didn't even start the engine for a while. I just looked out at the trees, expecting to see someone step out, but no one did. The drive back was a blur. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. I didn't sleep that night or the next. For days, I kept checking the news. Missing persons, hikers attacked, anything. But there was nothing. I don't know who or what I heard out there, but it wasn't an animal. The steps were too careful. The breathing was too controlled. And that knife, someone put it there. Someone wanted it to be seen. I haven't been camping since. I gave away most of my gear. My pack's still in the garage, collecting dust. Every now and then, I think about selling it all. But I can't bring myself to do it yet. I still go for hikes sometimes, but never off trail. Never alone. And I don't stay overnight. The funny thing is, people always talk about getting away from the noise, from the stress, from the crowds. But I think the noise keeps us safe. It means people are close. It means someone would hear you scream. Out there, no one would. Out there, you're just another sound in the woods. And if you ever think about getting away, about heading out into the middle of nowhere to clear your head, think again. Think real hard. Because I sure do. Every time. And now, whenever I see someone packing a tent, lacing up boots, heading off the trail into the quiet, I just think, I'll stay home. I've spent most of my adult life in the mountains, backpacking, hunting, sometimes just walking for miles with no plan but forward. I don't do it to prove anything. It's not about toughness. I go because that's where I feel clean, like I'm stripped of all the fake noise that clogs everything else. Phones, schedules, cities. Out there, it's just you, your heartbeat, and the land. That's why I went out to the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness in early fall, late September, before the snow but after most tourists cleared out. I knew the area. I'd been through the Custer Gallatin National Forest 3 times before. I knew the lakes, the elevation shifts, the trails that cut along the rocky slopes. I planned a 5-day solo trip. Nothing dramatic. Just in and out, a big loop following Hell-Roaring Creek up into the Alpine Basin, then over the pass and back down through the forested lowlands. What I didn't expect, or more accurately, what I ignored, was just how active the bears were that time of year. I knew the rule. Black bears are mostly scared of people. But if one attacks, it's not bluffing. You fight like hell or it eats you alive. Grizzlies are different. They don't want to fight either, but if they do come at you, it's usually a bluff. And if it's not a bluff, you better play dead. Let them think you're not worth finishing, because they like their meat to rot before they come back for it. I knew all that. I thought I was prepared. I had bear spray on both shoulder straps. I had a loud whistle. I carried my hunting knife on my hip and a lightweight .357 revolver. Not because I thought it would stop a charging grizzly, but because it made me feel like I had options. The trip started normal. The first day, I hiked 10 miles in, gained about 2,000 feet of elevation, and set up camp in a basin just above timberline. Clear skies, cold air, the rocks still warm from the sun. I made camp, hung my food high between 2 trees, and crawled into my tent with that good kind of ache in my legs. The kind that tells you you're away from the noise. The second day, I moved up the ridge and crossed over into the Alpine Bowl above Thunder Mountain. The terrain got rougher, fewer trees, more loose rock. Wind pulled at everything. I passed some prints in the mud. Bear prints. Old maybe 2 days, but deep and wide. Grizzly for sure. I stayed sharp. Talked loud as I walked, kept my spray unclipped. I camped again near a frozen tarn at about 9,500 feet. I didn't see or hear anything unusual that night, but when I woke up early the next morning, something was wrong. I noticed it first in the silence. No birds, no wind. Even the water in the tarn sat still like glass. I stepped outside the tent in my thermals and boots and felt it. A weight in the air. Like being watched, but from far off. I checked the area. My food bag was untouched. No scat, no tracks. But I couldn't shake that tight feeling in my chest. That little itch in the back of your brain that says, move. Something's not right. I packed fast. Didn't eat. Just shoved everything back into my pack and started descending the north side of the basin, moving fast over broken talus and hard-packed soil. The sun hadn't cleared the ridgeline yet. The shadows stretched long and cold over everything. About a mile down, I found the first sign. A tree, maybe 30 feet tall, stripped of bark 8 feet up. Deep claw marks gouged into the trunk. Fresh. The sap still glistened. I found fur caught in the bark, brown, thick, longer than black bear fur. Then I saw the tracks. Huge, 5-toed, claws clearly defined. Spaced far apart like whatever left them was moving with purpose. I froze. My hands went to the spray canisters without thinking. I stood there listening. That's when I heard the breath. Not loud, not even close, but I know the sound of a grizzly exhaling. It's like a burst from a blown-out tire, wet and low, like it's forced out of something huge. I scanned the slope. Nothing. Rocks, trees, brush, shadow. I kept moving. Slower now, one hand on my can, the other free. I dropped into the tree line an hour later. Pines, spruce, A thick carpet of dead needles muffled my steps. I tried to walk casual but alert. I whistled every few minutes, sharp and high. I'd read somewhere that sudden loud sounds can make bears think twice. Still nothing. By late afternoon, I reached the valley floor. I had another 7 miles to go before the next camp spot. A big flat clearing with an old fire ring and a small stream nearby. I pushed hard to get there before dark. I made it just in time. The clearing looked like I remembered. Flat, surrounded by trees on 3 sides, open sky above. I set the tent against the tree line, hung my food a good 100 feet off near the stream, and built a small fire. Not for cooking, just for heat and light. I wanted the smoke in the air, wanted something to let the woods know I was there. After dark, the woods closed in. I sat with my back to a log, revolver on my right side, spray in my lap. The fire cracked and popped, but it didn't comfort me. Every shift of the wind sounded like breathing. Every creak in the trees set my nerves on edge. Around midnight, I heard the first real sound. A branch snapped, not like a squirrel or deer, too heavy. Then another, then silence. I stood up slowly, firelight dancing off my jacket. I stepped away from the flames, eyes scanning the tree line. Another step, closer. I saw movement low to the ground. Brown, big. It stepped into the firelight slowly, head low, ears flat. Grisly. My breath locked up. It was maybe 30 feet away. Male by the size, probably 700 pounds. It looked at me like it was trying to decide if I was food or trouble. I raised the spray. My hand shook. It moved closer, slow and heavy. I shouted. Just noise. Sharp, ugly sounds from my gut. The bear stopped, huffed, lifted its head slightly. I didn't know if this was a bluff charge. I didn't know if it was just curious. But I remembered the rule, if it comes for you, play dead. The bear took 2 more steps. Then it charged. Fast, loud. Dirt kicked up behind it. I dropped to the ground, face down, arms over my neck. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I just clenched every muscle and waited. It hit me with its breath first, hot and foul. Then I felt the weight beside me. It didn't strike. It didn't bite. Just stood over me, breathing hard. Then it pawed at my back. One rough swipe. Not enough to kill, but enough to feel like a car hitting me. My ribs screamed. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. It left. I don't know how long it was gone. Maybe a minute, maybe 10. But when it came back, it brought dirt. I felt the first shovelful hit my legs, then my back, then my head. It was burying me. Not deep, just enough. Just like they say, cover you up so you rot. So you're tender when it comes back later. I stayed still, barely breathing under the dirt. Eventually, it left again. I stayed there, covered, cold, waiting. I think I lay there for an hour, maybe more. When I finally moved, every part of me screamed. My ribs felt broken. My left leg throbbed, but I clawed my way out of the dirt, slow and quiet. The fire was out. My camp was shredded. My tent crushed. My pack torn open. But I was alive. I didn't stop to think. I just grabbed what I could, my pistol, 1 can of bear spray, a bottle of water, and started walking. No pack, no food, just a broken man with a hole in his ribs and dirt still in his ears. I walked all night. Every noise behind me sounded like the bear coming back. Every shadow looked like it was moving, but I kept walking. By morning, I reached the edge of the trailhead. A ranger station sat empty nearby. I broke the window with a rock and used the radio inside to call for help. They sent a team in, found my gear, saw the tracks, said it was a known bear in the area. Big male. Not the first time it had buried something. They patched me up. 3 cracked ribs, dozens of bruises, a concussion. But I lived. That was the last time I went out alone in bear country. I still hike, still love the mountains, but I never forget what that night felt like. Face down in the dirt, ribs cracked, knowing I was being stored like meat, knowing it might come back any second to finish the job. Changed something in me. Now when I walk the woods, I walk knowing I'm not the top. Not even close. and I never sleep far from my spray. Never again. I'd camped in Montana before, but never alone. My last trip out there was with my brother and 2 friends during late summer, dry weather, full backpacks, high spirits. We saw nothing bigger than a marmot the entire time. So when I got the chance to go back the next spring, I figured I'd be fine solo. I wasn't green. I knew what I was doing. I drove up from Idaho into the western edge of Glacier National Park, taking dirt roads into a lesser-traveled area just outside the main gates. Public land, but not patrolled. I wasn't trying to be a tough guy, just wanted peace and quiet. A few days alone in the mountains before heading back to work. I planned to hike up the South Fork River Trail, camp about 6 miles in near a river bend, then spend the next day exploring the ridge above camp. I'd hike back the day after that. Simple, clean, quiet. I brought the right gear. Good boots, down bag, weatherproof tent, bear spray, a loud whistle, a sheathed knife, even an emergency beacon. I had my food in a proper bear bag with 50 feet of cord to hang it right. I'd read up again on the bear rules. Black bears, you get big and loud. Grizzlies, you play dead if they attack, or you slowly back away if you see them. No sudden moves. And if, God forbid, you ever see a polar bear out here, well, lie down and pray. The first day went smooth. The trail followed the river closely for the first couple miles, then twisted uphill through lodgepole pine. I saw tracks in the mud that looked like elk, maybe a moose. One small pile of black scat told me a black bear had passed through, probably not more than a day earlier. Still, no fresh claw marks, no ripped logs. I kept moving. It was colder than I expected, high 40s in the sun, probably low 30s in the shade, but nothing I hadn't dealt with before. There were patches of dirty snow still clinging to the north-facing slopes, and the river was high from meltwater. It rushed loud in some parts, quiet in others. I reached the bend where I wanted to camp in the late afternoon. There was a flat area just above the riverbank, with thick trees on 3 sides and a natural clearing big enough for my one-man tent. No signs anyone had been there recently. I scouted around, found a sturdy pine 20 yards off to hang my food, and set up camp. No fire, I didn't want the smell drawing anything in. I boiled water for a freeze-dried meal, drank filtered river water, and zipped myself into the tent just after sunset. I felt good. Sore legs, full belly, dry socks. Nothing better. But around midnight, I woke up. At first, I wasn't sure why. I lay still in my bag, ears open, eyes wide in the dark. The river made its usual noise just downhill from me, but I could tell something had changed. There was another sound, slow, soft, deliberate. Footsteps. Not human. Not a deer either. Something was walking near my tent, moving through the underbrush. Each step had weight to it, like a log settling into mud. One, then a pause, then another. It circled partway around my tent, maybe 15 feet out, then stopped. I didn't move. I listened hard. My knife was in the tent next to me, my bear spray outside with my pack. Stupid mistake. The footsteps started again, then stopped. Silence. My heart was beating so hard I thought the thing could hear it. I strained my ears until I caught a new sound. Huffing. A deep, nasal breath. Not a sniff, not an inhale, just a steady, thick exhale like a bellows. It was a bear. I lay there frozen, thinking, was it a black bear? Grizzly? Too heavy for a deer. Too deep of a breath for a moose. Couldn't be anything else. I stayed motionless, hoping it would wander off. Minutes passed. 5, 10, maybe more. Then I heard a rustling down by the tree where I'd hung my food. More huffing. Then a sharp snap of a branch. It had found the food. I waited until I heard it move a bit farther away, then unzipped the tent as slowly as I could. I kept low, barely breathing. Moonlight leaked through the pines, lighting the river and casting long shadows on the ground. I stepped out in socks, holding my knife in one hand. I crept back from the tent, eyes straining in the dark. The bear wasn't at the tree anymore. Couldn't see it, but I knew it was close. I crouched beside a fallen log and waited. The bear huffed again. Closer now. I stayed low, forcing my breathing to slow. I held the knife in front of me, but it felt ridiculous. like bringing a toothpick to a gunfight. Then it stepped into view between two trees. Big shoulders, long snout, light fur, grizzly. Hadn't seen me yet. It moved toward the food bag, which I tied high, about 12 feet up, using a counterweight hang. The bear stood up on its hind legs and sniffed. It was huge, maybe 600 pounds, easily over 7 feet tall standing up. It sniffed the air, then swiped at the rope. Missed, swiped again, still missed. It dropped back to all fours and huffed again, circling the tree. I stayed behind the log, not moving, every muscle locked tight. It stood again, this time resting its front paws on the trunk. It couldn't reach the bag, but it started scraping the bark, trying to climb. I knew I had a few options. None good. If I made noise, maybe it would spook, but maybe not. Grizzlies don't scare easy. If I stayed hidden, it might eventually leave, or it might destroy my food bag, get frustrated, and start tearing through camp. Worst case, it might find me, so I waited. It finally gave up on the tree after about 15 minutes. I heard it drop back to all fours, pace around the trunk, then move off toward the trail. More heavy footsteps, another loud breath. It didn't go far. I heard it stop. Then I heard ripping, branches being torn, logs shoved aside. It was digging into something. I waited nearly an hour before crawling back into the tent. I didn't sleep. Every sound outside had weight, like it could have been the bear coming back. A squirrel in the leaves sounded like thunder. At some point, I drifted off for maybe a few minutes at a time, but I woke constantly, sure I was about to be attacked. To first light, I packed everything. Didn't even eat. I checked the food bag, still intact. Rope was scratched but not broken. Lucky. Then I saw the prints. Just yards from the tent, massive clawed impressions. The bear had come that close. It circled me, knew I was there. I didn't hike out right away. I moved up to the ridge I had planned to explore, but not to enjoy it. I wanted a vantage point to look over the valley, make sure the bear was gone. I sat up there for hours, scanning the trees, gripping the knife. By mid-afternoon, I decided to head back to the trailhead. I moved slow. Every 20 minutes, I stopped to listen. I stayed alert. I had the bear spray in my hand the whole time, safety off. At one point, I saw fresh tracks on the trail, heading the other way. Huge, straight, no signs of panic. It had followed the trail I had taken in. Probably used to hikers. Probably used to free meals. When I made it back to my truck, I didn't feel relief at first. I felt watched. That sense doesn't go away quickly. You don't forget what it's like to hear a predator breathing just yards from you, with nothing but a nylon wall in between. I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before starting the engine. Not because I was scared to drive. I just had to sit there and feel safe again. I still hike, still camp, but I never go out alone in grizzly country anymore. And I never leave my bear spray outside the tent. Ever. That night taught me something simple. Out there, you're not in control. You're not the top of the food chain. And sometimes, even if you do everything right, the wild still reminds you what it is. I was lucky. That's all it was. Luck.